I'm Amy Dolan, and this is the Feeding People podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Feeding People. I'm Amy Dolan, your host, and I'm so glad to be with you again tonight at the table for a fantastic conversation and a chance once again to talk about how we can feed people and be fed. Thanks, as always, for rating our show, reviewing our show, and subscribing to our show on Apple Podcasts. It means so much to us as we're getting this show started. If you've enjoyed the show and you're able to share it with someone else, that would also be super helpful for us. If there's someone you know who is interested in gathering people around the table or improving their cooking skills or just talking about how food is spiritual and magical, please share it with them. You can do that by sharing the link in an email, posting it on social media, or my personal favorite, you can text someone the link with a little winky wink, hint, hint, hey, maybe you're interested in hosting someone for dinner. And then who knows what will happen. Maybe you'll get invited to dinner. I'm not saying that I've done this. I'm just saying I've done this. All right. Tonight at the table, we have a fantastic guest you are going to love, my dear friend, Brian Wolters. It's so good to have you here at the table. You have been at this table, I was trying to count, maybe 1 million times? I don't know.
A few times.
A few times, that's right. And in fact, you've been at this table so many times that you noticed when you came in tonight that we'd moved the table. So thank you for that.
Of course.
You're observant, amongst other things, right?
I noticed that much. I always know where the table is.
I love that. That's great. That's good advice for this show. Like if you're going to your friend's house and you don't notice that the furniture
Know where their dog is, know where the table is.
That's good. I like that. So we've been friends a long time now, which I'm so thankful for. You're one of the best people in the world, Brian. Seriously. We met years ago at a church we both previously attended. Yeah. I was thinking about this. I was going to say, do you remember? But of course you remember. We both worked in children's ministry and you were like the captain of the infant room for the children's ministry, right?
Yes. The room I had taken on because I could promise to not drop babies. And they kept me for a long time.
That was the requirement?
That was what I offered. And they accepted.
So you you went into church one day and you were like, here I am. I will not drop babies.
I will not drop babies. You can put me in the infant room. And so there I was. And I just kept showing up.
Now, of course, the question everyone is wondering, did you ever drop a baby?
Never dropped a baby.
Okay, fantastic.
Keep my word.
You kept your promise. Well, we met at that church and we've been friends ever since. And your wife has been on the podcast, Rosario, which, of course, if you haven't listened to Rosario Wolters' podcast, it's the 3rd episode. It's one of the best. She just did such a great job. And now we are starting Sunday Supper Church together. And you are our pastor chef.
2 years.
2 years. Oh, my gosh. We're going to talk all about that later, but I'm so thankful you're here, and I'm so thankful people are going to get to experience the Brian Wolters sparkle tonight.
Can you see the sparkle already, people? Can you see the sparkle?
Okay, so I've just introduced you a little bit, but like, how would you introduce yourself?
Let's see. Married. I have 2 boys, 6 and a 10-year-old right now. Know Amy through church, but we're at different church now. We're doing Sunday Supper Church. I've been in and around food and cooking business as a chef for my entire career since I was probably about 16 or so in one way, shape, or form or another, and moved around most all of it here in Chicago. Finished a culinary degree here a good while ago, about 10 years ago. And now just moving on my career, doing different things.
That's awesome. Such a good description. All right, so we got a lot to talk about tonight. We're going to get to everything, I promise. But I love starting with the question about what food was like for you growing up, because everyone's got a story. And it really seems like the way that we grew up with food in our families or in our neighborhoods really shapes us, right? So I'm so curious, Brian, what was it like for you in your home?
Grew up with an older sister, about 5 years older than me. And food was not such a big deal in our own house. You know, I was a cereal kid. I'd have cereal every morning, come home from school, just kind of a snack. Dinners were just kind of put together for the most part. Like as I got older, then took a part in making them or preparing them. Or like I remember shopping for groceries as a kid and clipping coupons and trying to find sales and this, that, the other. My dad worked during the day and would come home at night and sometimes would, be the one to make dinner. Sometimes would be my mom. But I think as soon as I kind of had the chance to, or like saw that it wasn't going to be there, I took some interest in like I could do kind of that job as like making those meals or putting something else together and make it something that I liked. And so not having too much more on that, like I would put together whatever I knew, whether it's pasta or whether it's like lasagna or like roasted chicken or something else like that. Like they were just kind of utilitarian almost, just sort of like, there were good meals there, whatever else, especially early on, they just were meals. Special meals though, we're probably going to my grandmother's house where we would go somewhat regularly, but always for holidays. So the big like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, other holidays, like that's where, she would put out meals for us and just kind of like feed all of us. And it was so much more relaxed. And we have just great meals there that she would put together. Like you wouldn't even see her sweat because she planned it out and had it ready ahead of time. But just like it always tasted so good. And we were just all sitting there at the table together, like really made some awesome memories.
It's so beautiful. So many people, it's so interesting. So many of our guests have stories about their grandmothers and specifically like where they first like either learned to cook or noticed cooking or felt love in the family for the first time. It's just so interesting, right? And true for you too.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you were a kid, you noticed that there was a need, right? That there was a need for someone to cook and make meals more often in your family. And so you just kind of were like, I'm going to help out. I'm going to fill that need. And you stepped in the gap, right?
Right.
And so because of that, you learned to cook and you shopped. And I love that you were a kid clipping coupons. That's amazing.
That was very much the other job. Way back when there were coupons to be clipped.
Like, okay, kids, we're actually talking about literally clipping coupons with scissors.
Yes, with
in
scissors.
The newspaper.
And then going to the store and price checking and unit pricing. And
how old were you when you were doing this?
Maybe like middle school or so.
Wow. I mean, it's amazing now to like, of course, like see your job where you're ordering food and pricing food and all of that. Like just so cool to see as a middle school kid, you were doing it to fill a need and help your family. And now like the way that that's paid off in your career, I love that. There's so many people who listen to the show with young kids and they're interested in helping their kids learn how to cook and, enjoy family meals. And I think this is such a practical thing. Like your kid can help you grocery shop.
It's a huge self-sufficiency
and know the money,
skill.
know how much it's costing, right?
Yeah.
Do you do that? Is there anything you do? Like, obviously, like your boys, do they shop with you? Do they know like how much food costs?
We more often than not definitely do grocery shopping all together, or at least like with the kids, mostly because you have to. You're not gonna have a babysitter, and it's inconvenient to split up. So sometimes it'll be one parent, but we try to do that. We try to get them to make kind of choices in advance of what they want to get it from the store.
Oh, I love that.
Lately, in the job that I've had, we've had the opportunity where we can usually menu plan for the week. So on a good week, we can plan out what we want for the week, and then we'll figure out what we need to buy for the week.
I love
and have that planned out for each day, so that way, we make sure we get snacks and breakfast and all that other stuff in there too.
I love that. And of course, like you're both chefs. So, right, like most of us are like, oh my gosh. But that's really such a great, simple thing you can do with your kids and your families to the degree that you can do it, right? If you can't meal plan for the entire week with your family, fine. But like make some sort of plan because it's so stressful otherwise.
It's only been realistic to do something like that with the job that I'm at now, where I've got evenings free and regularly, and I know what my days are going to be, because previously that would have been blown out of the water.
Yeah.
But now we can kind of build that into our routine, make one weekend grocery trip for the most part and get everything that we need for the week.
I love that so much. Okay, so you were a kid, you were clipping coupons, you were grocery shopping, you were making, I loved how you said utilitarian meals, right? Like nothing fancy, nothing like all of the herbs and spices, right? Just like we're having food.
Because you need a meal.
You need a meal, we're having food. So how did you discover that the food industry was what you wanted to go into? How did you know you had skills for that? And how did you know you had passion and interest in that?
It seemed interesting and it seemed kind of exciting because the more I was cooking, the more I was like trying to do different things. But there was a college that came by and made a presentation to a culinary class that was in my school. and I was able to sit in for that. And that was at least the first time that I probably considered it as a viable, career or profession. I was like, hey, this is something that people can do. And to me, from then and probably since then, that seemed more fitting to me than a 4-year college to do something else in a suit and a tie and sitting down and doing different kind of meetings. It seemed more like me.
Say more about that. Like, what was it that was you when you say like it was more for you, more like you than, right, like a 4-year university and all that? Like, what was it about it?
I think it was just like, I'm not otherwise an artist by any other means, but it was a chance to have something tangible that I could be creative with and enjoy doing, and try something and see how it would change and just kind of experiment. But I took a long drawn out process, like considering school and like one job to the next job and bridging those and taking like baby steps long into my career. Like it took steps to keep testing things out to see whether that's what I liked or that's what I want to do. And even now looking at like what I might change in my career, like it's all been baby steps. I'm pretty cautious.
I feel like such relief even in hearing you say that, because I think like I and so many other people think like successful people in their careers, it just kind of happened, right? They either worked hard or they were given opportunity and they were good at something and it just sort of happened. But that's not true for most of us, right? I mean, a few of us, but like most of us have to work really hard and go to school and have a lot of setbacks and not make a lot of money and also and test our careers several times, change our careers several times, right? So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
So tell us just a little bit more about what happened as you graduated culinary school. Like what kinds of things did you do in your job? I remember in Rosario's episode, she talked about working at the Standard Club and how y'all met there, right? Were you an intern with Rosario at the Standard Club?
I was not an intern. I had worked other jobs before that in restaurants, and I was still new to Chicago or so and starting my schooling here, but seizing an opportunity to meet with an instructor before class, just showing up early one day and we're just sitting there, peeling some beef tenderloins and chatting. He's like, well, I know a guy. And so following up a lead, it's like, took a job. It's like I needed a nice steady job. They were going to pay me well. I could do that while going to school. It was a win. She was the first intern there. But I did my internship about 6 months after I'd already been working there.
Wow. So what else? What did you do after the Standard Club?
Let's see. After that, there were a couple different restaurants. There's a Turkish restaurant that I worked at called Cousins. There was a cafe that was inside Borders. A couple other places around the city. A couple of jobs ago was the Signature Room.
Okay, let's just pause there. The Signature Room, people, in the John Hancock building. I mean, that's like fancy. What is it like feeding people in the Hancockville, in the Signature Room? Like, people go there for their engagements, right? Or there's probably a lot of tourists. Like, I mean, just like tell us, what is it like feeding people? On what is it, the 95th floor?
95th and 96th, yep.
What is that like?
I enjoyed it. There are definitely the high volume times when you guys like wonder why there's such a wait for. Like, there are nights that we're doing 700 people between 5 and 11 or
feeding 700 people
lounge,
in 6 hours.
So you're just looking at, you've got 65 reservations and those are just reservations plus, whatever other bar food or after dinner drinks or whatever else. There might be another catering that's going on. Like, we were cranking in that restaurant at times, and you're trying to show your best care and concern because it is a reputation, and you're trying to make your best food, and, you're trying to be your part of the wheel and the team, and you're trying to please the chef and do cool things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is just, you're pumping.
Yeah.
You're just pumping hard.
Sounds like a lot of pressure.
There's no other choice.
I'm like kind of sweating as you're talking. It sounds like a lot of pressure.
12 orders of scallops and 16 salmon and 4 of another, side of bass that are going up.
Oh my gosh.
You're just doing like time after time after time.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so after the Signature Room, you went to a hotel.
Yep.
You worked in a restaurant hotel. You reconcepted, you rebranded. I remember when we went there and you like showed us the whole menu, and that was so much fun. Yeah. What's it like working at a fancy hotel restaurant? Like, what is that?
That was an awesome opportunity. I took that on because they gave me a shot. I got in the door. That was my first, staff leading position. So I was the sous chef there, and then they promoted me soon after that. But there was the hope of turning this, restaurant that had been made by a previous chef, but he had left, and like the soul of that had all gone away with him. And we were just watering it down, and it was murky and it was yucky and it was stale. And I think people knew it. And the hotel, started to give a little bit of breathing room. And so any chance I had, I was squeezing in words and, ideas for this, that, or the other. And I had a good team of people around me that were doing the same. And we really believed that we could do something. So we kind of modeled it similar to a gastropub, which seemed tempting, trying to do as much as we could in kind of a realistic hotel setting. But, we eventually talked them into it and proved the point that they did a redesign. And so we reconcepted the restaurant.
Oh my gosh,
they did all kinds of, new furniture and rebranded it all over the place. And so we did all kinds of new business. And that was a great little playground to, put menus together and try things that I had picked up here, there, somewhere else.
Okay, so now tell us about your job now.
So after doing that and writing that for about as far as I could, but it was crazy hours. Like I was working breakfasts, dinners. It was a hotel, so we were, the restaurant was in service pretty much every hour of the day. So after that, I looked for the next job that was going to be, for one, and the biggest priority was going to be to balance, when I could get back to my family, because I had all but abandoned my wife and my kids at home, and kind of pursuing this. And she was, so supporting of that. But it was definitely time to take a step back from that and see, what I really, really want to do is be with my family and be dependable and be able to contribute to that and stop missing things because I'm gone all day. So I took a job with a catering company inside of a business. And so we catered the staff of that business on all their floors. It's kind of an office amenity. We provide their breakfast, lunch, dinner, drinks, snacks, all kinds of other things. So it's not glamorous. Nobody's really seeing us. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, but we got a pretty good, successful operation, pleasing our client, doing this, and I can do that, wrap up, and go home for the day.
So you're just, of course, amazing, Brian. And I love what you're saying about specifically choosing work that prioritizes your family, because you obviously were at a place in your career at the hotel where you could just keep doing more and more of that, right? More and more fancy things for more and more hours. And for you to say, I'm going to stop this train before it's too late and come back home with my wife and my kids is so beautiful. And I hope, if nothing else from this episode on feeding people today, I hope that someone takes away that the most important people that we feed every day are the people we love most, right?
Right.
So here you are feeding all sorts of fancy people all day long. And you said, wait a minute,
Right.
I got to feed these 3 people at home who are my favorites. So you've got your job now, which I'm just so fascinated by, because I've never had a job where someone delivers food to my desk. And that sounds amazing, first of all. But I'm so fascinated by this. So I remember a couple months ago, you texted and you were like, I have a whole plate of sushi that nobody ate. Would you like sushi? And I was like, yes, I love sushi. And you came by, and there was enough sushi for what? 100 people? There were so many rolls
There are about
on that plate.
3, we'll say, 20-inch platters of sushi, maki rolls.
Yeah. And Kelly doesn't eat sushi, so it was all for me. And it was basically the best day of my life. But I was so curious, how do you have this? What is this? And you were explaining to me that you did, sushi for the people at work, and this is what they didn't eat. Right. Help us understand that. What does that even mean? I can't imagine uneaten sushi. What does that mean?
It's just not insane. It's just insane. But the business side of it that I've learned since early on in my career is you're pleasing what your client is. Your customer is what's going to be most important. So what they want, what you're going to sell them. And this is only so different where our customer has decided, we want to have this available to these people at this amount of time for this, everything, they need to be there. And so on, most all these floors, there's a buffet. So these people walk up to a buffet that's all been provided for them. And their amenity is that they can have, anything that they want. And so they go through, you fix your plate, you sit down, you get back to work, because that's what their money maker's for.
Yeah, that's their work culture.
That's why they do it. Yeah. The side of that maybe you don't see, and maybe I challenge, those listening, is that, anything that they don't eat is going to be ended up mostly waste. And if you've ever walked into a buffet, you know that if it's done well, you don't have empty pans there. You're not going to, you don't want to be the one that's scraping the pan or digging like the last crouton out of this or whatever else. So it's got to be filled to a certain amount. And so we have a lot of buffets. And so all of that, bottom half of a container, bottom half, left half of a pan that they don't consume is potentially all waste. And so we're feeding a lot of people, but there's so much waste that comes down. There's always going to be someone producing it. And so there's always a little bit of waste over it, that doesn't, and the menu changes every day. And so food has to be fresh. We can't, reserve food, of course. And so it just has to be there. On their business side, it makes sense because they're getting the product that they want. But the other side of that is all of this leftover food.
So I know that you said the most important thing is serving the client, right? And this is what they want. So good job.
Right.
But on a personal, spiritual level, how does that affect you day in and day out when you see, because obviously you're seeing the platters come back, you're seeing the full plates of sushi and berries and vegetables and everything. How does that affect you every day?
I mean, I see when I'm purchasing and placing the orders for, this food, I see the prices on it, the actual dollar amounts for it. And I can see the food that we throw away. And I can also, finish cleaning up after lunch, seeing the food that's come down, and then trip over 4 people on the way to the train to come home that would have been starving for that food.
Wow, Brian.
The sushi that I gave to Amy, I could have given to 6 other people that many times over because there's just that much, and we do a great job. We're a very successful business. We do this very well, and our margins are smaller than many would be, but it's 1,200 people. So there's a certain overage there that you just can't manage any better than that. And so there's some food that we're able to donate, but for the most part, it's a lot of leftover food that frankly goes in the trash.
So because you're not able to maybe reconcile all that in your work specifically, have you found, I know you and Rosario are so generous and mindful of feeding hungry people, of course. Have you found because of not being able to, reconcile all that at work, you're more aware of feeding hungry people outside of work, or you're looking for opportunities, or you're noticing the people on the train, so that you can get some sense of okay, I didn't waste all the food, or I don't know.
That shit grinds on me. You're thinking about it, and and it's a day after day thing. It's a lot, and morally you just kind of feel pretty repulsive, but you're still doing your job. And there's, you look around, and anybody that's new to the system and trying to figure it all out usually starts with that same kind of expression of, oh my dear God, what is going on here? How is this possibly a thing? But we do it, and we do it well. Like I said, the people that are out there, and you're just kind of what am I going to do about this? And I think that's more and more gotten into my mind about, maybe what that next baby step is going to be is what direction can I go with this? Because, I'm not in it for fame. I'm not in it for the fortune. And I'm learning that there's got to be something else that I really want to put my hand to and start working towards.
So beautiful. First step always is being mindful and aware, right? So if you're not aware of how much food you're personally wasting, at least be mindful of hungry people around you and how you can use what you have to feed them, right? Thank you so much for saying all that. I feel like we're going to do a whole nother episode somewhere down the road, right? Producer Kelly? Okay. Because there's so much here, Brian, and your heart is just so beautiful. So thank you for showing all that. I want to talk about Sunday Supper Church because there's just so many overlaps because of the way that you cook and prepare food for us and spend no money and waste nothing at Sunday Supper Church. So let's talk about that for a minute. When we started this church 2 years ago, this weekend is our upcoming anniversary. We knew we wanted a dinner church. We believed in the power of food. We wanted to create a different type of church. And I knew that food had to be central, and specifically beautiful, delicious, tasty food. We've all been to church potlucks, which are just wonderful, but I knew I did not want that. Okay. I wanted a beautiful meal that had been really professionally, thoughtfully cooked. And I knew I couldn't do that on my own. There's no way. I can cook for 4 to 6. That's kind of my
That's the
happy place. But I knew that I needed someone to help. And of course, you were first on my mind. And you have been, I call you the pastor chef. I feel like you're just recently embracing that title.
Begrudgingly so.
But you are a pastor chef, and you have been our pastor chef from day one of Sunday Supper Church, not only because of your skills, because you know how to cook for 30 to 50 people and kids, but because of the pastoral heart that you put into it. And that is actually what has been so rewarding. I never could have expected that. I mean, just because we didn't know what we were doing, right?
Right.
But to watch you gathering, every single gathering, so thoughtful about what the food is going to be, who's going to be there, how's it going to be prepared, how's the team going to make it, how's it going to be served, is just like, feel emotional even saying all this, because it is central to what we're doing. We are literally a church that feeds people, and that is so central to what we're doing. And without you, that would not be happening. So,
well, you humble host, just to be out there, is the fact that, it's not that she even asked me to do that. I, like anybody else who was sitting in like this first kind of opening dreamy session about Sunday Supper Church, was given an opportunity, like, do we want to be involved at all? And is there an area, one of 6 different areas, do we want to contribute in? And so it wasn't even that Amy brought me and said, here's the deal, here's the spiel, and can you do this for me? And, be the chef and like sign up to cater. Like, she left it completely open. Maybe she was hoping for that. Apparently she might have been, but she left it fully open. I could have checked any number of boxes, and, I've never doubted since then that she wouldn't have let me, take one of those roles. But what I also am, although it is definitely in my heart, is I'm a man of a certain small set of skills, cooking being one of them. And so like it is in my heart, and it became something that, this is something I could offer to people. Other people have much better gifts of either just organizing or managing the details, or looking into things, or covering bases, or communicating. But, put me in a kitchen or give me an opportunity like that, and I can probably put a meal together for you. And so that was, one way that nobody was going to fight me for offering to contribute to this small group that's now growing and growing.
Yes, right. So I want to just share just a couple things too about how it all happens, because other pastors who are so curious about our church ask me, this is the number one question they ask me, like, how does do you actually serve food? And how does that happen? And I think, oh yeah, we just do it. So I don't really think that it's that unique anymore, right? But right, churches don't serve food. And not beautiful food made by you. So we have a small food team who prepares the meal that you lead, and it's one of my favorite things. And I encourage people in our church to be part of it, because it's been such a special thing. Because you lead us, you help us all grow in our cooking skills. So you tell us, well, try this, try that, try this, and you tell us the quantities, and you assign us things. And that's been such a meaningful thing for me, that I'm learning how to cook and improve my skills from you in doing this. And I've never had an opportunity in church to do that, as probably you. We've not had opportunities in church before to use our heart for cooking, our skills for cooking, to cook for the people.
Right.
And so it's so great to be part of the food team. You spend very little money. I can't believe it. Like, it's always, I feel like it's a game now. Like you have a budget and you always return money back.
Try.
So, I mean, to just see how your skills have come, as from a kid clipping coupons to now, like, using a church's resources to feed people is just great. When I tell other pastors what our budget is for food and how many people you feed with that, they're like, huh? I'm so proud of that. And that is all you. The other thing I just want to mention is that we mostly do vegetarian meals because we decided from day one we wanted everyone to enjoy the same meal, right?
Yep, so at the same meal at the same time.
Same meal, same time. So, I mean, everyone knows Kelly has a dairy allergy. And so I spend a lot of time watching him like go to parties and having to not eat half the food, or only have the rice because everything else has cheese or dairy in it. And I just didn't want that for anybody.
Sure.
I wanted everyone to sit down and enjoy food.
I'm right there with you.
So I don't know. Do you have anything else to say? Like, has that been a challenge for you in creating the vegetarian meals, or is that, I feel like that has been such an extension of your pastoral heart as you think about the people?
There were some new skills, and definitely like with that being the gauntlet, and I was, full on for that message. I understood it. I got it. The whole vision of the church is that we're sitting across the table, in the same gathering of community. If you're trying to have that at your own dinner table, you make one dinner. Like, you may have everything there, but everybody's going to be eating from the same dinner. And so that's what it had to be. It just had to be there. And knowing that there are people out there, from my food experience, like all, Signature or anywhere else, like there's always people that have had, food allergies and the things you have to be very careful about because they are physically or emotionally or, for some other reason, incredibly significant. And so I got that, but there were all kinds of new skills. Like I'd never made so much gluten-free pasta and had to figure out like how that is kind of a different beast.
Those first few months, that's all we were doing. Gluten-free pasta.
Yes, we did gluten-free. We did pretty much vegan. We tried to do we pushed that as far as I'd probably ever had to come up with new
Remember
ideas.
that vegan lasagna you did with
Yep.
tofu? That was so good.
Yep. But, trying to cook how much gluten-free pasta can I make in this one giant pot on my stove at a given time and then try to put it all together. Like there were some definite times where it was not the shiniest of stars that I would put out there. But yeah, I tried to do the best I could. I put my heart into it, and it seemed like people enjoyed it. And again, me doing that and working a little bit harder on that was just a bit of effort for me. For somebody else, they would have been far more upset or would have been really concerned or worried. And I wasn't that. And so again, like that was my gift. Like that is my one utility of tool that I could offer for that purpose.
I love that. That's so beautiful, Brian. And I feel like, obviously I knew you in the other church where you were not dropping babies and you were phenomenal, but like to watch you use your skill that you have, the passion that you have to pastor the people now is just like a whole nother level. Do you have any advice for people who are maybe some pastors or church leaders who are listening, who are in churches now, of course, don't have dinner church and all that, but have food at like some kind of meal? Do you have any advice for like, how do they find of course, there are people like you in every church. It's like, how do they find people like you and encourage them like, you're going to be our pastor. You're going to use the skills of cooking and food and passion and love to feed our people.
I mean, the best you can be, being of any kind of quality pastor is like, you've got to know your people.
Yeah.
And you can probably find, a couple out of a flock that's going to have, they're kind of inkling. Like they like to cook, they like to do dinner parties, like to do meals for this, that, or the other. And you've pretty much got to start from there, of those people that might be interested in this. How far can some of them take it? Logistically, how far can they take this? Interest-wise, can they be committing to this? And you just have to, kind of start there. Like, if that's your talent pool that you're working with, like, figure out what that group can accomplish for your church. Whether that's just going to be, like, they make sandwiches for the church, and that's at least where you start with. And it's like, so now our church has sandwiches. We make our own sandwiches. Or whether it's a full, catered meal or whatever else it is, like, you're considering your space, you're considering your budget, but consider your people. Like, that's just up there with the budget too.
So good, Brian. So good. I think of my niece, Kate, who is about to be 10 and loves to cook and is practicing every day. And I just think about like she cooks for their small group and sometimes different events at church. And I just sometimes think like, will she be a pastor chef someday? Like, and will there be more roles like that in the future where the chefs and the cooks and the people who are most connected to food can be the ones pastoring us?
Yeah.
I love this. We could talk about Sunday Supper Church and feeding people all day long. I do just want to say, I never invite people to Sunday Supper Church on the podcast, but I want to do that today because if you've been listening and you need a very wide table, you need a place to sit and be with friends and be seen and be loved, and most importantly, enjoy a beautiful meal cooked by Brian and the team. And you need to feel God's love and warmth through food and through people. Like, please join us. You can message me and I'll tell you the upcoming dates, but please come and enjoy a beautiful meal and meet the pastor chef, Brian. Will you do autographs?
I will do autographs. They're certainly worth the price of admission.
Okay. You're amazing, Brian. Of course. I love you so much. This is really great. Let's do a quick lightning round to finish up. What is your favorite cookbook? I'm so curious about this. Do you even have cookbooks?
I have a lot of cookbooks.
Okay.
And I'm very much a person that will read them for, particular techniques or methods of doing things. One that I'm probably still forever fond of, and I know that it's old and, the line cooks out there should grin and roll their eyes at me for this. But I still love my old French Laundry cookbook.
Oh, right.
Thomas Keller French Laundry cookbook. it's a classic. And early on, like I remember getting that one and like reading it cover to cover and studying it and studying it. And one of those jobs where I was working in a bookstore, I got a discount on books. So I was buying up all my textbooks for school from the Borders and getting all the cookbooks I could put my money into. And just reading books like that just to see like where the art of it really is and when you really put like, set of skills there, like what you can create. And then you hear, all about this restaurant and the experience that it is.
The French Laundry Cookbook. I got to get that. Have you been to the French Laundry?
No.
Okay. No. Let's go. We got to go.
Yes. All the Thomas Keller restaurants. Any of them.
Anytime.
Right.
Okay. What is your very best recipe? If you could pick one, what's your best recipe? What are you most proud of, or what are you known for?
Well, I mean, just because it's kind of fresh in my mind, I'm hoping to be making some gnocchi this week.
Yes.
And so that's one thing that I've kind of tooled around with a bit, but I always love doing that and making that and having people over just to share a good plate of food with.
Gnocchi. Do you do like a tomato sauce? What do you do with it?
Usually just brown butter, something like that.
Butter. Oh my gosh. So good. Brian, this has been amazing. I want to finish up with just one piece of advice that you have. Since we've talked a lot about not wasting food and how we could all just be more mindful about the way that food is thrown away just in our, it can be overwhelming to think about how food is thrown away in our country because that is overwhelming. But like, let's finish this show now with just one piece of advice that you would have for people. What is one tiny, tiny step that they could take in wasting less food?
Simply have more people over to eat with you.
Yes.
Try to share that with the people that you can get to know or that you know already. And the opportunity is there. Everybody's going to eat one way, shape, or form. So put the food out in front of people. And while you're at it, sit there, talk between bites, and make a friend, find out about somebody, argue with them, solve a fight, whatever. Have some good drinks, have some good food.
I love it. You will waste less when you have more people over, right?
Yep.
Less leftovers, less trash.
Yeah. Great
advice, Brian. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I love that you're part of Sunday Supper Church. I love that you're feeding people every single day. Do you ever have a day off from feeding people?
I mean, my wife can definitely cook. So.
Oh, yeah, she can. Thank you for being here tonight, Brian.
Thank you, Amy. Love it.